So in today's lesson, we want to speed read the next few chapters of Tanya. The purpose of the speed reading session is to get an overview of what the discussion of Tanya that we are learning is, so that over the next few months, when we go through word by word, phrase by phrase, sentence by sentence, idea after idea, slowly, every once in a while, to come back to the speed reading session and just zip through very quickly the whole picture, to put our individual lessons back into context, because it happens that when you learn in great depth, you lose sight of the big picture. That's why we're doing the two parallel tracks of the speed reading, and right next to it is the very careful reading, slowly and painstakingly. So we begin, this is chapter 12. In chapter 11 and in chapter 10, the Alter Rebbe introduced us to all the levels of Rasha and all the levels of Tzaddik, all the levels of the wicked people and all the levels of the righteous people. And now the Alter Rebbe is telling us what is expected of the average human being, what is the best that the average human being should expect of himself. The Habeinani and the average, meaning the best that the average human being can expect for himself, is one in whom evil never gains so much strength to conquer the small city, meaning the body, to clothe itself in the limbs of the body and cause it to sin. What that means, namely, that the thought, speech, and action of the animal soul never, which originate, because they're from the animal soul, they originate from klipa. They never overpower the divine soul to be allowed to clothe its animal self in the body, in the limbs of the body. Whether that means in the mind or in the mouth or in any of the limbs, thought, speech, or action, to cause them to sin or to cause them to become impure, God forbid. It's only the three garments of the divine soul, thought, speech, and action, of Taryag mitzvah satayra, is what is allowed to be clothed in the limbs of the body. The internal fortitude, the internal situation, the internal dynamic of the Beinani, of the regular human being when he has reached his best, is that no sin in the world would tempt him and would throw him off the path. If he were always on this level, he would never sin and he would never have sinned. So that he would never have been called Rasha in his entire life. If that's the case, then why is he not a tzaddik? Because although the garments, the thought, speech, and action of righteousness are the only ones allowed expressed in the Beinani, however, if we're talking about the inner dynamic, the internal dynamic of the Beinani is different than that of the tzaddik, because the tzaddik has only divine intellect and divine emotive attributes. The Beinani has both holy and unholy inside of him. The divine intellect and the divine emotions and the divine instincts are not the only ones who have control over the body. They're not the only ones who have a say over the body. It's only at certain times of inspiration, when the Beinani is really on a high, like when he's davening, or like when he's saying Shema, Shas Mech, and the Gadlus L'maylo, is a time when the intellect really has tremendous power and even assistance from above. And down here in the physical world, it's also a time of inspiration, the time of prayer and the time of Kriya Shema. At which time a person who is meditating and focusing on the greatness of Hashem is really attaching his mind to Hashem, when he delves deeply in his mind into the greatness of Hashem, and when he's working to arouse a feeling of love in his heart, in the right side of the heart, to cleave to Hashem and fulfill his commandments through love, which is how the Beinani does attach himself to Hashem. And you'll notice that the Beinani is filling only the right side of his heart with love for Hashem, unlike the tzaddik, who's able to fill both sides of his heart with love for Hashem, because that's the nature of the Beinani. Elsewhere it was explained that the whole process of saying Shema and its whole meditative system is where the Shema is biblical and the brachas beforehand are a rabbinical institution to help achieve the goal of Shema, of devotion and love for Hashem. All of this is explained elsewhere. Point is, at that time, even the evil of the left side of the heart is silent. Yeah, it's unable to flow. It's unable to have any influence over the person, because the right side of the heart, under the influence of the mind of the person, is so strongly connected to Hashem at that time. That's the inspired moment of the Beinani. And a Beinani is like that. Sometimes he's inspired, sometimes he's down, sometimes he's up, sometimes he's powerfully connected with Hashem, and sometimes he's just average. After davening, for example, when the connection to Hashem on the level of sublime intellect and the assistance from heaven departs, then the evil will reawaken in the left side of the heart, and he will go back to desiring the things that humans desire, the pleasures of this world. It's only since the evil doesn't have sole control over the body, that's why he's unable to express and to achieve his animalistic desires by being clothed in the limbs of the body, because there's always the counterbalance, that is the divine soul, that is preventing him from gaining any expression in actual deed, thought, or speech, where he should allow himself to entertain the thoughts of how pleasurable or how to achieve a certain worldly pleasure. Like we said earlier, because the mind rules over the heart. And that's just the nature of a human being, that a human being has the simple and inborn innate capacity to control what he is going to think, and certainly what he's going to say and what he's going to do. That's how a person is created. That a person is able to quelch the urges of his heart, not to fulfill the yearnings of his heart in thought, speech, or action. If a thought of desire perks up in a person's head, he has the capacity, innate, inborn, it's natural to every human being, that he can remove his thoughts from it entirely and change the subject of his internal discussion. And most helpful would be if he would switch it to some thought about something holy. And the extra power and beauty in that is that when you have light and you turn the lights on, good, some more light is beautiful. When you have darkness and you turn the lights on, that's even extra beautiful. And when the darkness itself becomes light, that is superfluously beautiful. Here, the Beinani is being told by the Alter Rebbe that he has the opportunity to turn the lights on in the dark. The Beinani is not the one who is going to be able to transform the darkness into light, but he can certainly turn the lights on while it's dark in his mind. When the Yetzer Hara is filling his mind with thoughts about worldly pleasure, the Beinani is able to change the direction of his thoughts into something productive and holy. Pirush, what does that mean? Using the analogy of turning the lights on in the dark, the Alter Rebbe explains the power of the mind over the heart. Just as light has power over darkness, just as physical light has tremendous power over physical darkness, automatically pushing it away, if you just turn on a little bit of light, a lot of darkness is pushed away. So too will the foolishness of the animal in the left side of the heart be pushed away when you turn on the godly wisdom in the divine soul. in the mind, turn on the wisdom of holiness, and the foolishness of the animal soul and Yetzer Hara will be automatically pushed away, just like darkness is automatically pushed away by light. You don't get a broom and sweep away the darkness, you just turn on some light. Obviously, the animal soul has the desire to rule on her own in the body, and to have sole leadership and sole rulership over all the functions of the body, to have her will expressed in the body. But the divine soul pushes and controls her decisions. That it's the divine soul that gets her wishes fulfilled in the body. Like we said before, this way the Beinoni never sins and never gives way, never gives in to the animal soul. And yet the Beinoni is not called a tzaddik, even though he's never sinned. Why? Because the control that the divine soul has over her enemy, the animal soul, over the foolishness of the animal soul, is only when it comes to expression in the three garments of the soul: thought, speech, and action. But the essence of the divine soul has not gained control over the essence of the animal soul at all. Because in the Beinoni, that animalistic urge, the impulse to self-gratify, has not been reduced or removed at all in the Beinoni. Even after the tefillah, even after a great session of prayer and meditation and connection and cleaving to Hashem, still when the davening ends and the fire of love and passion and yearning for Hashem dissipates, you'll see the animal soul comes right back to where it was. What happens to all that passion? What happens to all that love? It returns to its innate, inborn, hidden state, because there's always a love for Hashem and hidden in the Jew, and the Beinoni lives by that hidden love, as we were going to learn in great detail later on in Tanya. So instead of being a revealed and conscious urge and yearning to be close to Hashem, the love for Hashem reverts to being something that is subconscious, something that's in the recesses of the mind and heart of the Beinoni, instead of being something that's overwhelming and overpowering, and never lets the Yetzer Hara, never lets the animal soul to express her opinion at all. That would be a tzaddik v'rali. And so long as the animal soul, so long as the divine soul is not experiencing a expressed and conscious feeling of love and devotion and yearning for Hashem, the animal soul is able to express her opinion in the left side of the heart. To express yearning and urges towards all the physical delights of this world, whether they be permitted or whether, God forbid, they be forbidden things. It will be as though the Beinoni never felt that inspiration at all. The dissipation of that inspiration will be so complete that the Yetzer Hara will behave as though it was never under its spell whatsoever. Of course, we're talking about a Beinoni. In a Beinoni, it never occurs to him to actually fulfill in actual deed that forbidden sin. Instead, what the Beinoni is subject to is imagining, fantasizing what it would be like, how delightful it might be how delightful that sin might be, without ever considering actually doing it in physical, actual deed. But thoughts about sin are in a way even worse than sin, because they're closer to the soul and they leave a deeper mark on the consciousness of the person. And certainly they cause a distraction from his Torah study and his prayer and his service of Hashem. The Chachamim say there are three sins that no person is safe from transgressing each and every day, and that is thoughts about Aveda, thoughts about sin, and lack of concentration in prayer, and Lashon Hara. Those things you have to be very careful of. So therefore, the Beinoni is included in the generalization that no man avoids thoughts of sin. The question is he entertaining them? However, the impression that's left in his mind from the inspiration that he worked up during his davening and from the natural inborn love that he has in the right side of his heart, gives him the ability, the sustained ability, the regular and consistent ability to shut down the nefesh habahamis' machinations and imaginations and fantasizations, to prevent the animal soul from gaining control over the limbs of the body and acting on any kind of sinful impulse, be it in action or speech or deed. This is the life of the Beinoni. He has moments of inspiration where he feels elated and connected to Hashem, and he has the rest of his day, which is average human, and it's merely the strength that he prepares himself, that he prepares for himself or herself, that through his davening and through his meditation and contemplation, and then add to that the innate love and yearning of the soul, of every Jewish soul, to connect to Hashem, that gives that person the ability to never sin, even though he's not a tzaddik, even though the animal soul is pushing interests and foreign fantasies into his mind. Furthermore, even in the mind alone, with respect to sinful thoughts, the evil does not have the control to cause the person to ruminate, to really consider deeply in his mind a thought of sin. We know that there are thoughts that the animal soul will push into the mind. The question is, will the Beinoni receive it and entertain it? No. What happens in the life of a Beinoni is that as soon as the sinful thought rises in the mind, he pushes that thought away from himself with both hands. As soon as he realizes that that is an impulsive thought, an evil thought, a thought that he doesn't want to entertain. He will refuse to accept it even as a subject for mere conscious thought. And certainly he won't even consider to do it in actual deed or even to speak about it. Because a person who willingly entertains thoughts about sinful things is called a rasha at that moment. And we learned the Beinoni, this control, the purity that the human being who is called the Beinoni, the average human being, the best and highest level that a average human being can achieve for himself, is to maintain constant control over his thought, speech, and his action. This was yesterday's Tanya. This was the theme of yesterday's Tanya. And during the class, Rabbi Chaikin shared the following story. There's a chassid called Rabbi Nissan Nemena from Paris, and he has nephews in Montreal called Denberg. And he used to visit Montreal community to raise funds for the yeshiva and to farbring. And there was a 10-year-old boy in the house of his nephew Denberg, where he was staying. And the young boy innocently asked him, there's a rumor that you are the Tanya's Beinoni. Is that true? Tanya's Beinoni means the best that an average human being can achieve. So the uncle didn't answer. He just said to him, do you have a watch? Yeah. Can you count 60 seconds? Can you control what happens in your mind for 60 seconds? Not to think anything particular, just be in control, that you decide what you're going to think for 60 seconds. So the boy did it for 60 seconds. He was in control of what was going on in his mind. And when he finished, so the uncle, Nissan Emenov, said, and that's the work of a Beinoni. That's the whole Tanya. Just stay in control. Maintain control. That is the best that the average human being can do. And that is what the Alter Rebbe is describing as the Torah's ideal level that any human being can reach, is simply to maintain constant control over your thoughts, over your words, and over your actions. So too in matters between people. Whenever a person feels any grudge or any anger or hatred coming up in his heart against another person, or any kind of negative emotion, he does not allow his mind willingly to curse that person or to have them any bad will. In fact, the natural power that the mind has over the heart can cause that the person shall do the exact opposite in his heart, in his mind, that he will instead act with that person with extra care and love. To display towards this friend a disproportionate love in suffering from him to the furthest extreme, without being provoked into anger, God forbid, or taking revenge against the person, God forbid. Instead, to repay offenders with kindness. As the Zohar says, to learn from Yosef and his brothers, where they did evil to him, and he repaid them with tremendous kindness and generosity. That is the description of the internal dynamic of the Beinoni. He has this animal soul that's pushing ideas into his mind. He has the Yetzer Hara that's pushing urges into his heart and mind, and he is constantly pushing them away. He's catching them at the door, and he's pushing them away. As the famous story goes, the Maggid of Mezrich once sent a student of his to another student, because the student said, "Tell me how I can prevent negative thoughts from entering my mind while I'm praying." So the Maggid said, "Go visit my student," and I forgot his name. So he went to that village and he knocked on the man's door. No answer. It was in the evening time and he was hoping to come in for dinner and a place to sleep. No answer. And he's knocking and he's knocking and he's knocking. A whole night the man wouldn't open the door. And he's knocking and he's knocking and he's begging, "Let me in." And he hears the chassid learning inside. He knows he's there and he knows he hears him. And in the morning, the host finally opens the door and the man complains, "Why didn't you let me in? I was knocking a whole night." And he says, "It's my house. Just because you knock, I have to let you in." That's the lesson that the Maggid wanted the student to learn. Just because it knocks on your door doesn't mean you have to let it in. The Beinoni catches all negative impulses and thoughts at the door and pushes it away with both hands, not letting it to enter. Now we go to chapter 13. And in chapter 13, really, the Alter Rebbe will spend some time answering some of the questions that were asked in chapter 1. So let's go one at a time. In chapter 1, we learned about the oath that the Beinoni is made to take, that he has to be a tzaddik and he won't be a rasha. The question we asked is, why does he have to do both things? If he's going to be a tzaddik, he's certainly not going to be a rasha. Another question we asked is, what exactly is the nature of this Beinoni? Who are his influences? And we asked a few more questions, and we'll review the questions as we come to the answers in the chapter. So, now we can understand the precise language of the Chazal when they say that the Beinoni is judged by both, meaning the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. What does it mean he's judged? First of all, where did we get this language from? As it says, Hashem stands to the right of the poor to save him from the judges of his soul. What are the judges? The language judge is very precise. The sages did not say that the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov both rule him. They don't rule him. Because if the animal soul, the Yetzer Hara, would have any rulership over the body, even for a slightest moment, that guy would not be a Beinoni. He would not have achieved the highest and best level that the average human being could achieve. Instead, he would be called a rasha at that time if the Yetzer Hara had any control. Rather, in the life of the Beinoni, this highest level that the average human being can achieve, the Yetzer Hara is only like a judge on the Supreme Court. He doesn't rule, he just voices his opinion. And it can always be that person's opinion will be overruled, because there's another judge on the Supreme Court on the bench that argues against him. And you'll need, between these two judges, you'll need a third to break the tie. And the rule will be like the one who breaks the tie. And this is exactly a perfect analogy for the internal mechanisms of the Beinoni's life, because you have the Yetzer Hara on the one side, who expresses his interest, his opinion, in the left side of the heart. And then he sends a message up to the brain. Let's consider this option, this judgment, this decision from the animal soul. But immediately in the mind, he is met by the divine soul with his opinion, who is the other judge on the bench. And he sends the message back down to the heart, to the right side of the heart, where the Yetzer HaTov lives. But who's going to break the tie? That is Hashem himself, who supports the Yetzer HaTov, the good inclination in a person. As the Chazal taught us that if Hashem hadn't helped us, we would not be able to strengthen our Yetzer HaTov against the Yetzer Hara. What is that help? Is a special divine assistance that Hashem shines on the godly soul to give it the extra edge of control over the foolishness of the fool, the evil inclination, like that strength that light has over darkness that we described earlier. However, since the evil that is in the heart of the Beinoni stays there, and it has not even been weakened at all from pushing its interests and pushing its cravings into the mind of the Beinoni, it has not even been nullified at all, pushed aside at all. It is there in all its strength. It just doesn't have any power and control. It just has never given any control to spread its wishes through the limbs of the body, because Hashem is standing to the right side of the divine soul, assisting and helping and adding strength. Therefore, the Beinoni is called Ki Rasha. He's like the wicked man. And that's the meaning of the statement of the sages when they said that even if the whole world says to you, you're such a tzaddik, you're such a tzaddik, you should always see yourself Ki Rasha, like a Rasha. Remember in chapter 1 we said, how could we be encouraged to think of ourselves like a Rasha? We'll become despondent, we'll become depressed. A person doesn't want to be a Rasha. So the Alter Rebbe is clarifying. The sages are not saying view yourself as a Rasha. The Alter Rebbe is saying view yourself as like a Rasha, meaning le Rasha mamish, not literally a wicked person. You should consider yourself a Beinoni, meaning the average human being who is serving Hashem with all his might in a true and authentic service by controlling your thought, speech, and action, never allowing the Yetzer Hara to push any thoughts into your brain, to push any words into your mouth, and to express any wishes, any desires, any self-oriented actions in your limbs. However, even when you're successful in being a Beinoni meaning the highest possible level attainable by an average human being, and the whole world looks at you and says, judging by your actions, you are a tzaddik. No evil is expressed in your life. Therefore, you must be a tzaddik. Says the sages advise, don't see yourself as a tzaddik. See yourself as a Beinoni, because the tzaddik is a person who doesn't even have an impulse to evil. He doesn't even have the animalistic urges in his life at all. For a person who is Ki Rasha, a person who has the internal dynamic that is like the Rasha, where he has the animal soul pushing its interests, but he has the divine soul and the help of Hashem helping him to control those urges. If he were to let his guard down and say, I don't have to worry anymore because there is no urge to evil in my life, that's very dangerous. That's a bad plan. Rather, he should always have in mind, he should always think of himself as one in whom the impulse to evil is there and strong and ready to take over the minute that the tzaddik, the minute that the divine soul relinquishes its control over the body, that it has not departed or been vanquished or weakened at all. In fact, it makes sense to say for the Beinoni to say about himself that his animal soul and his animalistic urges have been strengthened as time goes on, because as a human being, he has to eat sometimes, he has to drink sometimes, he has to attend to his human things sometimes, and every time we do, we add fodder and we add strength to the animal soul, to the animalistic urges. That cannot be avoided. Even a person whose entire interest is Hashem and Hashem's Torah, and he toils in Torah day and night, and he does so honestly, earnestly, and authentically for the sake of the Torah itself. That doesn't prove that the evil has been vanquished and removed from his heart. It could very well be that the animal soul is just as strong as ever in the left side of the heart. It's just that in the Beinoni, the thought, speech, and action of the animal soul, its garments, are never given any expression. Because Hashem has given the gift of mind control over the heart. Giving the divine soul power over the body, so that the body should be its chariot to only express thought, speech, and action of Torah and mitzvahs. However, although the Beinoni has control over the garments of the animal soul, he should not think for a minute that he has control over the animal soul itself. The essence of the animal soul is still as strong as ever. The intellect of the animal soul is as strong as ever. The urges of the animal soul are as strong as ever. The only exception to that is when in davening and in meditating and contemplating the greatness of Hashem, this average human being works up an inspiration, works himself up into an inspired feeling of closeness and love for Hashem. That is the only time that the animal soul is somewhat silenced and somewhat tamed. In those special times we mentioned before, like prayer. Even then, during those special times, he's not changing his animal soul at all. He's not transforming it into something more refined. He's just controlling, subduing it. As it's described in the Chumash, that the holiness and unholiness are described in Chumash. They're compared to the two nations of Yaakov and Esav. And when one rises, the other will fall. But it's just fallen. It's not weaker. It's not changed. You haven't made it more refined or holier. It's just fallen. It doesn't have this. It doesn't have the upper hand. But if you will let your guard down for a second, it'll gain the upper hand. And then that person would become a Rasha in that moment. So that's not the Beinoni. It's that the divine soul is using its mind, its intellect, to maintain control over its animalistic urges. This Beinoni is using his mind to develop a strong sense of love and yearning for attachment to Hashem, and that helps to subdue the impulse to evil that is in the left side of his heart. But it has not become nullified or abolished at all in the Beinoni. Only a tzaddik is that fortunate. About whom it says, my heart is vacuous within me. It's empty. It's hollow. That's only a tzaddik. And even that, the tzaddik, we have the different levels like we discussed in the previous chapter. But inside the Beinoni, the evil impulse, it's like a person who's sleeping. When he's sleeping, he looks so benign, so cute, so tame. But then he'll wake up and he'll come back to life with a roar and overwhelm the person if he can. When a person is davening, when the Beinoni is concentrating on his love for Hashem and on the greatness of Hashem and how wonderful it would be to be attached to Hashem, at that time the animal soul is subdued, quiet. But immediately afterwards it could easily reawaken and push the person to do the wrong thing. This answers the question why a Beinoni should view himself like a Rasha. It means keep your guard up. Never let your guard down, because as soon as you let your guard down, that literal bad boy, the Yetzer Hara, the animal soul, is going to come roaring back to life, and he's going to throw you off of the good and holy path that you've been traveling. Now, for this reason, Rabbah said that he considered himself a Beinoni. Even though his mouth never ceased from studying Torah. And his heart yearned for nothing other than Torah. With a true craving, desire, and longing. And he was always up, he was always inspired with love and yearning for Hashem, the way a Beinoni could be during the time of davening meditations. Still, he saw in his mind as though he was a Beinoni who was fortunate enough to spend all his time studying and davening, and therefore always on a level of being worked up. As the Chazal said, if only a man could spend his whole day davening and always be that inspired, he would never fall from the path of good, and he would never fall away from his connection with Hashem. Now wait a minute. A tzaddik has truly vanquished the evil in his heart. The evil is not there anymore. And if it is there, it's so overwhelmed and nullified that it doesn't have a voice. That's real. That's connection to Hashem. That's love for Hashem. That's a true transformation of a human being from something mundane to something holy. What about the Beinoni? What is he able to arouse in his heart? A temporary love for Hashem. That as soon as his mind goes on to a different subject, that passion, that love, that fire, that inspiration will disappear. Is that real? Is that authentic? Is that something to be proud of? Well, if a tzaddik who is capable of vanquishing and banishing the evil from his heart, if he would serve Hashem on the level of the Beinoni, then that would not be authentic. Because that love for Hashem, that it would be inspired only as a product of the davening, it goes away afterwards. And on the level of tzaddik, where his internal dynamic is pure and clean of any vestige of evil, if his inspiration dissipates, that's not authentic. In the real tzaddik, every new level of inspiration that he attains, every time he does a mitzvah, every time he serves Hashem, every time he studies a passage of Torah, every time a Shabbos or a Yom Tov comes and passes, the new level of inspiration remains permanent, because there's no friction, and therefore there's no downward pressure. There's no evil to schlep him down. Therefore, he just climbs higher and higher and higher, and every new level attained is retained permanently. But that's the tzaddik. It says in the pasuk, the lip of truth shall be established forever, but the tongue of falsehood is only momentary. For a tzaddik, a temporary inspiration is not authentic. Whereas for the Beinoni, who will always have this impulse to evil, the animalistic urge, the Yetzer Hara in his heart, in his left side, it'll always be there. It's not going away. And therefore, he's always suffering the downward pressure of the world's influences. For him to work up a sense of inspiration, love, and yearning, a passion for what is holy, and some level of disinterest in the world's pleasures, for the average human being, that's perfect. For the average human being, that's perfect. Each person according to his capacity. And I would say, says the Alter Rebbe, that such a passion that they work up through their contemplations in davening, in their davening meditations, the Alter Rebbe says, I would call that truth. I would call it authentic. How do we know? What's true about it? Because the Beinoni is capable of reigniting that same love every time he davens, day after day. And that is a sense, that is a certain level of permanence, regularity. Obviously, this is going to take a certain special work, each person according to their own level, according to their rank of their souls, and so on. Truth is the true, emes is the attribute of Yaakov Avinu. As the pasuk says, you give truth to Yaakov, titan emes li Yaakov, and that Yaakov is called the B'riach HaTichon, the central pole that ran through all the walls of the desert traveling tabernacle. Mereim hamaylas umadreges atzeif kol dargin, from the highest level to the lowest level. Ubechol mayla madreg b'riach HaTichon nekudo hemtzais, and at every level, this pillar of truth, the central beam, is there, it's present according to that level. And every level has the right to be what it is, and its central core, which is attached to the line of truth that goes from the highest level to the lowest level, that is its truth on its level. The attribute of truth is an unbounded inheritance. It has no upper limit as it extends into the highest levels, and all lower gradations and levels are as nothing compared with those superior to them. It is a fact that levels are what they are, and they're allowed to be what they are. You cannot require a lower level to be authentic to the same degree as something higher than him. Same as people. You cannot require spiritually talented people. You cannot require the constant inspiration of spiritually talented people from all regular people. Regular people are allowed to be regular, and the best that they can do, if it's honestly their best, for them that is authentic. Parentheses. It is known for those who know Kabbalah that you have these levels, and the lowest level, you have these levels. Yeah, you have realms, you have grades or spheres, and in each sphere you have exalted parts, higher parts, and lower parts. Every sphere is made up of pieces and parts. In each sphere, the lowest part of a given sphere is immeasurably higher than the highest part of the sphere that comes after it. Therefore, you cannot expect those that occupy a lower sphere to conduct themselves to the same level of authenticity or consistency as those of a higher sphere. It's unfair and it's not honest. That's what we're saying. Those on the lower levels are given permission to be on the lower levels. As is brought out from the teaching of the sages, that the feet of the chayos, which are those heavenly angels, they are corresponding and surpass all other layers of creation that follow them. What have we learned here? We learned that the Beinoni is not the tzaddik because he has the urges to evil in his heart, but he is like the tzaddik because he never sins. But he's like the Rasha because he has those urges, and he must never take credit. He must never relax into the role of tzaddik, because as soon as he relaxes, the evil impulse is going to wake up and take him down. And he maintains his inspiration by davening once a day, working up a love and passion for Hashem once a day. And for the Beinoni on his level, if you could really feel the love and yearning for Hashem, that is authentic. That's real. In chapter 14, we continue on this theme of answering some of the questions of the first chapter of Tanya. Now that we know what is the Beinoni being the highest possible level attainable by average human beings, now we realize that it's something attainable to all human beings. At every moment, we have the power to be a Beinoni, to be at our fullest and highest potentiality, at a fullest and highest level. Because to be a Beinoni, you don't have to despise the things that you're avoiding. because that's something that's given over to the heart. And for a Beinoni, sometimes we're inspired and we really hate evil, and sometimes we're not inspired and we don't hate evil. Rather, the life of a Beinoni is merely control your deed, control your thought, control your speech, do the right thing and avoid the wrong thing. And in those matters, every person has absolute freedom to direct his conduct exactly how he or she wishes. To do even the exact opposite of what you want. Because exactly at the moment when your heart is desiring something, whether it's permitted or forbidden, he's able to overpower it by saying to himself, I don't want to be a wicked person. Even for one moment. Because I know that sin will separate me from Hashem, and I don't want to be separated from Hashem in any way. Rather, I would like for my soul to be attached to Hashem on all of the levels, to be clothed through my three garments of thought, speech, and action, in the thought, speech, and action of Torah and mitzvahs, which are Hashem's garments. I want my thought to be attached to Hashem's thought. I want my words to be attached to Hashem's words. I want my actions to be attached to Hashem's actions. Where do I want this? I have this innate love and yearning for Hashem. It's built into me. Every Jew has that. I'm not special in that, but it's real in me. And therefore, I don't want to be disconnected from Hashem. If even the simplest and crassest and most skeptical of the Jewish people is capable of sacrificing, laying down his life for the sanctity of Hashem's name, certainly I'm not worse than the most skeptical and the lowest of the low. Even that person, when he does sin, why does that person, that fallen person, the lowly person, why does he sin when he does? How did he end up being so low and so cold and so far away? Because he's overcome by the spirit of foolishness from the animal soul. He imagines that he can go about his life and sin as much as he wants, and that it doesn't impact his connection with Hashem. Only because he believes he's still connected with Hashem does he allow himself those liberties of sinning. And that spirit of foolishness also caused him to forget the fact that in his heart he has a raging, burning, natural, inborn love for Hashem. But as for me, the Beinoni says to himself, I don't want to be a fool like him to deny the truth. That is something that every human being is capable of doing, to have that kind of inner discussion when a improper thought or an improper statement or an improper action presents itself in front of that person, in front of you, you have the ability to retain control over your thought, speech, and action and never sin. It's a matter of maintaining focus, mental focus on what's true. However, to cause a transformation in your inner life to the point where you are disgusted by anything that is evil, or fully or even partially, only special people are able to achieve that, because that requires such an overwhelming sense of love and passion for Hashem that it wipes out all other passions and interests. That's like living in Olam Haba even while you're still alive in this world. And the Chachamim say that's a foretaste of the world to come, because that is a gift that's given to a person by Hashem after years of hard work, purifying and refining your behavior. As it says in the Torah, sometimes Hashem will give as a gift a new level of avodah, a new level of service of worship to Hashem, commissions by Magamachar. This has been explained elsewhere. We have a statement in the first chapter of Tanya where he says we need to understand what Iyov told Hashem. Hashem, you created the righteous and you created the wicked. Well, we had a question. If Hashem created the righteous and Hashem created the wicked, then where is the freedom of choice? Don't we learn that everything is in the hands of Hashem other than fear of Hashem? That is the area in which a human being has free choice. But now, after all this discussion, we can begin to understand what Iyov meant when he said, Hashem, you have created the righteous and you have created the wicked. This means that among the Jewish people, there are many levels of soul. There are Hasidim, who the holy books call that the highest level is Hasidim. Giborim, there are strong men. Mizgabrim al Yitzram, who overpower their impulses. Morei Torah, scholars of Torah. Neviim, prophets, tzaddikim, righteous people, and so on and so forth. Why? Iyov is not describing the behavior of people. In your behavior, you have been given the choice. You have not been given the choice with regards to your internal dynamic. Will you have the voice of evil inside you, or will you not? That is something that Hashem alone determines. We who are born with the impulse to evil inside of us, that doesn't mean that we are destined to be wicked people. It means that we have the impulse and we were given at the same time the choice to always overcome and to always maintain control. Okay. So now we can understand the other question we asked about in the first chapter, about the double vow: be a tzaddik and don't be a rasha. Before the soul is born, the heavenly court makes him swear, be righteous and don't be wicked. Strange. I already swore to be righteous. Why do I have to swear again not to be wicked? Since not every person is capable of becoming a tzaddik, to rejoice so much and delight in closeness to Hashem to the point where it will overwhelm the evil inside you that you should really hate everything that's evil. Not everybody's capable of that. And therefore, therefore they make him swear a second oath. At least don't be wicked. Meaning, at least don't express any wickedness in your thought, speech, and action. In that aspect of life, every human being is in control. Every person is capable that throughout their lives, from the moment that they decide, from now on, I'm going to fulfill my oath and I will not be wicked, you have the control over yourself at all times. Whether it means avoiding things that are evil, whether it means doing things that are good, and obviously when we say good, we mean Torah. Specifically the study of Torah, which is equal to them all, equal to all the mitzvahs for various reasons, which we will learn elsewhere. Wait a minute. So why doesn't the heavenly court simply say to a person, make him swear, don't be wicked? That would do it, wouldn't it? If the purpose is to avoid evil in thought, speech, and action, then the oath could simply be, don't be wicked. Why does the soul have to also swear, be a tzaddik? Because it's our obligation sometimes to strive for the level of tzaddik, to set aside times to study why evil is so loathsome. Where a wise person, meaning anybody who takes the time to think about it, will see that all the worldly delights, whether they are bodily delights, whether it's food and drink, whatever kind of delight it might be, a wise person will look forward into the future and see what will be the end of this object. It'll end up either as a corpse rotting in the earth, or it will end up as digested food somewhere else. How all of these things in the end turn into filth and dirt. worms and garbage. This is a device that will help a person to learn to abhor evil or the world's the pleasures of the world that are for the sake of the pleasure, at least a little bit. Every once in a while, we have to set our sights on that goal of learning to prefer holiness and those things which are eternal over worldliness and those things that are temporary. We also, this is what he says next, we have to spend some time focusing on the opposite. Train ourselves to rejoice and to delight in Hashem by meditating on the greatness of Hashem according to your capacity. Even though you know that you'll attain this degree of inspiration and it'll only be momentary, nevertheless, you have to do what you have to do. You do the best that you can. To fulfill your oath, be a tzaddik, meaning be a person that's inspired and really on fire with passion from love for Hashem. And then Hashem will do whatever He sees fit. Additionally, there's an advantage. Habit reigns supreme in all matters, and it becomes second nature. When a person accustoms himself, he trains his mind to have that inner conversation about the loathsomeness of evil, he could develop it into a habit, and it will really become a little bit loathsome to him in an honest way. And as well, when you train yourself to think joyously and with celebration and with delight about the greatness of Hashem, then maybe Hashem will respond to you in kind and give you the gift of the spirit of some tzaddik soul that will fill up your own soul, and you'll be able to serve Hashem with true love and true joy. Because that's why tzaddikim serve Hashem with great joy. At which point he will really be able to fulfill the oath of be a tzaddik. When we come back, we will learn the further chapters describing the internal struggle of the Beinoni, and then after that, that should be the final class in the speed reading session, and then we will merit to hear a great introduction to this section of Tanya by the one and only Rabbi Naftali Silverberg, author of the many courses on Tanya for all kinds of people with all kinds of backgrounds. It should be very, very special with Hashem's help. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next week in Mitzvah Hashem.